This video is for entertainment.
The scene opens on a high-stakes legislative hearing. The atmosphere is charged, with the bright studio lights highlighting the tension between the two main figures. The polished mahogany table before Pam Bondi, the renowned former Attorney General of Florida and the state's first woman to hold that esteemed office, gleamed under the chamber's powerful lights. The leather folder resting beneath her hands, a rich, dark brown, seemed like an extension of her own formidable presence. She sat composed, a picture of quiet readiness. Across the aisle, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, universally recognized as AOC, leaned forward, her hands tightly gripping a slim, silver pen. Her expression was a vivid combination of focused resolve and undisguised skepticism. A visible energy, like a faint electric current, crackled between them, an unmistakable signal that the political clash everyone had anticipated was about to ignite. It all began with a calculated, surgical strike. AOC's voice cut through the slight hum of the chamber, ringing out clear and perfectly modulated, as she addressed Bondi directly. "Madam Attorney General," she started, her tone razor-sharp, honed by countless public debates. "I find it profoundly intriguing that someone possessing what I must term an, shall we say, historically dated legal education believes they are positioned to lecture this body on the nuances of contemporary policy and legislative direction." The word struck like a physical blow, generating a low, immediate swell of murmuring throughout the room. She paused, a master of timing, allowing the heavy implication of irrelevance to hang thick in the air, her eyes drilling into Bondi's, an open invitation to react. "No offense intended, of course," AOC added, her slight, knowing smirk betraying the lie. "But a degree earned in an era before the digital revolution doesn't exactly project cutting-edge expertise in today's rapidly evolving global landscape, does it? Perhaps we should discuss what truly constitutes a modern credential." The entire room seemed to catch its breath. Reporters frantically scratched notes, their pens creating a sound like a sudden cloud of agitated insects. Legislative aides exchanged quick, nervous glances, confirming the gauntlet had been decisively thrown down. Will this opening salvo cripple Bondi's credibility before she even begins? We'll have to wait and see. AOC settled back in her chair, a look of smug satisfaction on her face, as if she had successfully delivered a knockout punch in the first round. She had masterfully framed Bondi as a museum piece, her educational background rendered obsolete in the swift, progressive current that AOC so fiercely championed. But Bondi didn't even flinch. Her face remained perfectly steady, almost unnervingly serene, as if she were accustomed to such verbal projectiles and understood the critical importance of not reacting to bait. Her hands rested lightly, fingers elegantly interlaced, on the table. Her gaze was locked on AOC, not with a spark of anger, but with a cool, calculating calm, the classic posture of a seasoned legal strategist meticulously assessing the board before making her own move. The silence that followed lengthened, transforming AOC's moment of perceived triumph into something unexpectedly awkward and unsettling. The assembled crowd waited, yearning for a snappy retort, a flash of indignation, any sign of a break in composure. But Bondi offered nothing. Her profound composure was a disarming, quiet force that seemed to absorb and neutralize the sting of AOC's aggressive attack. She tilted her head just slightly, a minute twitch appearing at the corner of her mouth. It wasn't a smirk, but a definite hint of private amusement, suggesting she possessed crucial information that AOC had entirely missed. These legislative hearings were, of course, no stranger to theatrical verbal duels. They often morphed into stages for inflated egos, desperate chases for memorable sound bites, and fleeting viral moments. But why did this specific exchange feel fundamentally different? AOC's opening jab wasn't merely about policy disagreement. It was a deeply personal assault, a direct challenge to Bondi's professional legitimacy, her foundational education, and her very right to occupy that chair. She had carefully chosen her words to diminish and discredit, aiming to rally her base by painting Bondi as a figure hopelessly out of step with the times, her law degree from the respected Stetson University College of Law reduced to a dusty, quaint artifact in a world demanding bold, disruptive ideas. For a brief moment, the strategy appeared to be working. Younger aides nodded subtly in affirmation, and reporters were already tapping out tweets, eagerly shaping the narrative of AOC's latest takedown, the vibrant, modern congresswoman outwitting the entrenched old guard. Yet, Bondi's profound silence was subtly, second by second, rewriting that entire story. She didn't snap back with a sharp comeback or raise her voice in defensiveness. Instead, she leaned forward slightly, her unwavering gaze still fixed on AOC, and reached for the worn leather folder on the table. The movement was deliberately slow, almost ritualistic, suggesting that time itself was an invaluable ally in her defense. The folder, scuffed but undeniably elegant, was the unmistakable kind a seasoned trial lawyer would carry, its edges softened by years of critical use in courtrooms long before this high-profile hearing. She opened it with meticulous care, revealing neatly organized, color-coded papers inside. The room watched, their curiosity now reaching a peak, as her fingers moved with the precision of someone who had performed this exact action countless times. She still didn't speak, didn't acknowledge AOC's taunt, yet every fluid movement radiated absolute, quiet control. AOC, sensing the unexpected shift in momentum, doubled down on her original premise. "I'm simply stating, madam," she said, her voice strained by the need to recapture attention, "that the professional world has fundamentally progressed. We desperately require fresh, innovative voices, not individuals relying on credentials from a time when, metaphorically speaking, typewriters were considered cutting-edge technology." The quip elicited a few nervous, scattered chuckles, but the laughter felt thin and hollow, as if the audience could sense the tide was rapidly turning against the aggressor. Bondi's continued silence was no mere pause. It was a potent, undeniable statement. She carefully extracted a single sheet from the folder and held it up, not for theatrical drama, but simply to allow the federal seal upon it to be clearly visible. The paper was clean, official, and bore the authoritative seal of a federal court. She did not read it aloud. Why didn't she? She didn't need to. Its mere visible presence instantly recentered the entire room's focus away from AOC's attack. AOC's earlier smirk vanished for a split second, replaced by a telling flicker of doubt that crossed her face as the distinct possibility arose that she had profoundly underestimated her opponent's strategic depth. Bondi finally spoke, her voice low, even, and steady, carrying the warm, grounded cadence of her Florida roots, now laced with an unmistakable steel. "Congresswoman," she began, pausing just long enough for the gravity of the moment to draw every single ear. "With all due respect, I do not believe my degree is the substantive issue we should be focusing on here." The words were outwardly simple, yet they sliced through the tension like a well-honed blade. She neither shouted nor engaged in flamboyant gestures. Her calm, powerful presence alone filled the entire chamber. The reporters abandoned their typing, the aides fell silent, and AOC froze, her pen hovering motionless above her notepad. Bondi's gaze held steady, and in that moment, it was abundantly clear, she wasn't just responding to a personal jab. She was strategically setting the stage for a much larger, more substantive debate. The crowd leaned in, feeling the tangible shift in power. Bondi's composure was not a sign of retreat, it was the poise of a veteran who had navigated far tougher legal battles and emerged, unequivocally, stronger. She gently placed the official document back into the leather folder, closing it with a soft, final snap that resonated in the hushed chamber. "I have discovered, over many years," she continued, her tone measured and deliberate, "that it is not the vintage of a legal education that ultimately matters, but the tangible, ethical, and meaningful work you choose to do with it." The line landed with the authoritative weight of a gavel strike, quiet yet profoundly forceful. A few onlookers, particularly those seasoned by years of professional life, nodded in agreement, a low murmur rippling through the older segment of the crowd, those who understood that proven experience often massively outweighs mere bravado. AOC opened her mouth, readying a counter-response, but Bondi wasn't finished. She leaned back slightly, her posture now relaxed, her eyes gleaming sharp, like a seasoned trial lawyer prepared to deliver her closing argument. "You see, Congresswoman," she elaborated, "I have dedicated the majority of my professional life to serving people who genuinely could not care less about the university seal on my diploma. They care only about one thing: what gets done for them, in the real world, when their future is on the line. It was a brilliant, strategic pivot, successfully steering the debate away from the shallow waters of personal attacks and toward the profound, broader concept of public service and tangible results. The room felt it, the abrupt shift from AOC's fiery, ideological provocation to Bondi's grounded, undeniable authority. This wasn't just a win, it was a redefinition of the rules of engagement. Bondi was not playing AOC's game, she was fundamentally rewriting the rules for everyone present. The hearing pressed onward, but the fundamental energy had been permanently altered. AOC's earlier, absolute confidence noticeably wavered, her meticulously organized notes now appearing more like a desperate shield than a focused weapon. Bondi sat exactly as she had from the very start, utterly composed, her worn folder a silent, powerful promise of more prepared evidence to come. Reporters shifted their focus, no longer obsessing over capturing AOC's latest soundbite, but instead watching Bondi, anticipating her next strategic move. Aides whispered furtively, some furiously jotting notes, others openly speculating about the nature of the official paper she had briefly displayed. What critical case file was it? What powerful testimonial? Whatever it was, it had decisively tilted the room's intellectual gravity toward the former Attorney General from Florida. AOC made an effort to regain lost ground, firing off a series of highly specific policy questions, but the sharp sting of her earlier personal attack had been noticeably dulled. Bondi answered with effortless clarity, her responses firmly rooted in a deep, nuanced grasp of the law's real-world impact on ordinary citizens. She offered no boasts. Her sheer, undeniable presence spoke for her. The assembled crowd saw a woman who had demonstrably earned her place through decades of relentless, ethical work, a person who had faced doubters before and would undoubtedly face them again, always meeting the challenge with the same quiet, formidable strength. The clash was far from over, AOC was too fierce and determined to retreat entirely. But Bondi had masterfully set the tone, and the entire room was aware of it. She had successfully absorbed the personal challenge, neutralized its toxicity, and seamlessly transformed it into a valuable opportunity to showcase her mettle, not through bombast or bluster, but through the steady, unyielding resolve born of a life spent proving herself where it truly counted, in the courtroom and in service to the people. That single piece of paper, her profound calm, and the determined glint in her eye all signaled this was merely the opening chapter of a much longer, more compelling narrative. Bondi was ready, and now, the entire world was finally watching. Stick around, you won't believe what powerful evidence she has yet to unveil to the panel. The focus shifts back to the immediate aftermath of Bondi's strategic silence, allowing the tension to settle before the next beat. The chamber still intensely buzzed with the lingering aftershock of the opening salvo. The air remained thick, heavy with unspoken questions about the full nature of the confrontation to come. The highly polished mahogany table before Pam Bondi continued to gleam, brightly reflecting the dark, authoritative leather folder, now undeniably a central visual focal point as much as she was. Bondi maintained her unruffled posture, her hands resting calmly on the folder, her eyes steady and warm, demonstrating her profound trust in her long-honed legal instincts in the heart of this legislative fray. AOC continued to grip her pen tighter than before, a subtle flicker of deep-seated unease now apparent in her typically confident stance. She had publicly ridiculed Bondi's law degree as a relic, but Bondi's precise, measured response, or rather, the strategic lack of one, had effectively thrown her off balance. The crowd sensed this shift, the low murmurings quieting significantly as they leaned further in, their eyes darting rapidly between the two women, anxiously awaiting the next crucial act in this high-stakes intellectual duel. Bondi's deliberate silence was a sophisticated, surgical strategy, one forged in decades of courtroom warfare where patient composure and meticulous preparation often proved to be the undoing of overly aggressive opponents. In this high-profile chamber, with the stakes astronomically high and the audience vast, she continued to play her game. She carefully reopened the folder, the worn leather emitting a soft creak that sounded like a calculated cue. She then drew forth a fresh sheet of paper, crisp and official, clearly bearing a federal court seal, and placed it down on the table, explicitly allowing the document to speak for itself. Focus instantly sharpened. Reporters momentarily paused their typing, aides craned their necks for a better view. AOC's eyes quickly darted to the paper, her momentary crack in confidence quickly papered over by a tight, forced smile. "Congresswoman," Bondi stated, her Florida accent deliberate, her words precise and measured like those of an experienced prosecutor. "You focused heavily on the age of my degree. And I will readily concede, it might not look like much by the metric of newness. But allow me, if you would, to share a brief story about a specific case from many years ago." Her voice, calm and conversational, instantly commanded the silence of the entire room. She glanced briefly at the document, a subtle action intended to draw every eye back to its significance. "This document right here is an excerpt from a letter penned by a federal judge, offering his personal praise for a complex case I successfully handled, a case where the law was, quite literally, the final lifeline for desperate people who had absolutely nothing else left to fight with." She paused again, her direct gaze fixed on AOC. "That judge, I assure you, cared profoundly about how I utilized my degree and the result I secured for my client, not the precise year in which I received it. And I would argue, the public feels the same way." The document served as powerful, undeniable testament to her concrete, real-world work. No boast was necessary. It subtly recalled her pivotal prosecution of famous individuals for probation violations, or her leading the multi-state legal challenge to the Affordable Care Act, which required her to argue the case directly before the Supreme Court. Her efforts in those battles wove together the precision of legal logic with a powerful sense of empathy, consistently earning judicial respect for her clarity and command. Formal endorsements like this document carried significant weight, reflecting her diligence in combating complex issues like the opioid crisis and human trafficking throughout her career. AOC shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her silver pen now tapping a fast rhythm against the table. She was determined not to back down, her mind racing to regain control of the narrative. "A pleasant story, Madam Attorney General," she countered sharply, or returned to her acidic tone. "But a single, anecdotal case from the past hardly qualifies you as an expert for the immense challenges facing the nation today. We need solutions for the now, not dusty history from the then." It was a sharp pivot, attempting to reframe the debate as one between progress versus the past. The younger audience members in the room nodded visibly. Reporters diligently noted the increased bite in her tone. But Bondi held firm, her eyes locking with AOC's with quiet, unwavering confidence. "I lay no claim to possessing all of the world's knowledge concerning today's issues," she said steadily. "However, the people I have honorably served, the struggling farmers, the small business owners, the dedicated teachers, they care deeply about truth, not fleeting trends. And the truth, Congresswoman, does not come with an expiration date." The words rippled across the chamber like a stone dropped into calm water, eliciting murmurs of deep agreement from the older contingent who placed immense value on tangible, proven experience. Bondi spoke to broader, fundamental truths, resonating powerfully with the often underestimated majority. She elaborated further, her voice gaining a richer texture. "That specific case was about a working person who was risking everything they had, threatened by bureaucratic rules they didn't understand. I dug deep, not to prove my academic smarts, but because the human stakes were unbelievably high. No new degree was needed. What was needed was a commitment to listen carefully, and then to fight rightly. That, Congresswoman, is the simple definition of my life's work." A profound silence descended once more, the weight of her words settling heavily upon the room. AOC momentarily paused, her eyes cast downward. Bondi's brief, humanizing tale was a testament to a lifetime of strategic preparation and dedicated showing up. There was no need for a lengthy list of career victories, the document itself served as sufficient proof. Her work was built on steady, unrelenting labor, not on performative flash. The crowd shifted perceptibly, their attention moving away from AOC's initial fiery bravado and toward Bondi's grounded resolve. Reporters furiously noted the distinct turn, and aides began searching their devices for details about the obscure case, intrigued by how she had managed to turn a simple letter into such a powerful source of authority. AOC, visibly frustrated, pivoted sharper still, though her voice had lost its earlier sting. I respect your experience, Madam Attorney General, but the systemic, complex issues we face require genuinely bold, novel ideas, not tired reliance on old case law. That is a fair assessment, Bondi responded, the slightest hint of a smile touching her lips, having completely disarmed the personal nature of the attack and grounded the debate firmly in human terms. She then sipped her water deliberately, allowing her words to sink in completely, before offering her final, measured thought, but at the heart of all systems are individual people, Congresswoman, and those people deserve a dedicated fighter, not merely a polished talker. The cut was deep, and it masterfully reframed the entire debate on Bondi's terms. The hearing continued, but the pivotal moment had already passed. Bondi's folder remained, an enduring promise of further evidence. AOC scribbled furiously, her confidence noticeably tempered. The crowd remained fixed on Bondi's quiet, unyielding strength, a force that silently commanded genuine respect. She had transformed a potentially crippling attack into a powerful opportunity, armed only with her truth and meticulous preparation. The stage was set for bigger things, and the entire room was now acutely aware of it. But what was the exact content of that letter? The answer, friends, is coming next, and it will shock you to your core. Stay with us.